Are we saying actually the humble granny annex could help solve the Fife housing crisis for mature owners? Is that really the case? QBT! Okay, so here we are. Fife property market. Granny annexes. Could this actually help solve the Fife housing crisis? I mean, most Fife homeowners are born before 1960, have been in their homes for more than 25 years. That's a huge number. Most Fife homeowners born before 1960 have been in their homes for more than 25 years.
We do see that quite a lot.
I've actually been in my house for about 18. And I'm 55, so it's like, oh, okay, right, add on another 5, and I probably will be for another 5, actually. Yeah, when you think about it, all of the properties sold in the UK since the first lockdown in the summer of 2020, 50% of those property owners have only been in their homes for 6 years and 4 months or less. That's quite startling as well. This means that we have almost have a two-speed housing market. You know, why would that be, Perry?
I think what we're seeing is you've obviously got the younger homeowner, haven't you? So one of the markets for homeowners at the moment is those that are in their 20s and 30s, and they move every 4 or 5 years. And if you think about it, that makes sense, doesn't it? Because they've maybe a professional home, they've each got a home, they're getting married, they're growing families. So you're seeing them upsizing, aren't you? But the other property market that we see is the homeowners who, when they hit their late 40s, tend to stay put for decades.
Yeah.
In most instances, I think. Yet now those mature homeowners, many of whom are retired and on fixed incomes with pensions, something you talk about a lot, Jim, are finding a lot more challenging, I think, to make ends meet, aren't they, in the current climate? Just with the cost of living crisis, I guess, that we're all being affected by in some shape or form, aren't we? Whether it's our food bills, fuel bills, car bills, you know, we're all noticing a difference, aren't we? Impact's different for everyone, but there's definitely a difference.
Yeah. I think we see that more and more. Actually, I mean, I had a gentleman this morning, actually, we were talking about food and how to make a quick meal. And I think it was the fact that somebody had said the food's so much nowadays. And I went, well, you could actually get a beans, baked potato and veg, and you could probably make that for 50 pence. And he immediately jumped on and went, 50 pence? A tin of baked beans is £1. And I went, you can get a pack of four tins of baked beans at Lidl's for £1.09. So it just shows you. And then he actually responded back and said, that's actually a good shout. I never realised that at all. But it's only when you kind of tend to forget about that, don't you? You tend to kind of get in. It's almost like, I tell you what, we're going to digress a bit. It's almost like when you get onto insurance. If you forget about your insurance, the next minute you know you're paying double than everybody else is paying. But they rely on you forgetting because they do the automatic renewal. They don't really send you anything out. They're trying to be as sneaky as possible about the whole thing. But that's just a digression. Let's come back to the real point. Evidence suggests nationally and locally a lot of larger houses, property which tends to be owned by mature homeowners, have come onto the market in the last 12 months compared to the previous few years. Did you know, as we speak right now, there's 918 properties available for sale right across Fife right now?
That's quite a surprise, isn't it? It's almost double what it was 6 months ago.
Yeah, almost double. However, before the pandemic, there's 1,200. So it's not unusual to have that. And before the pandemic, the market was still pretty buoyant. Jimmy, have we got into a situation where it's almost like we're indoctrinated into thinking to ourselves, my house should sell and it should sell quickly?
Yeah, there's I think for people that aren't in the industry day in day out, they're still getting the stories when they're down the pub from their friends, from whoever it may be. Oh, this person sold their house a few months ago and they got X amount over the home report in a week. But that's not the world's changed a lot since then, and there's a lot more properties on the market. The market is still it's still a good market. From my research that I've done recently, which I've been reading on Rightmove, the activity is still more buyer inquiries than the peak of the market in 2019. So there is still good activity, but there's a lot more to choose from on the market now than there was even 6 months ago. And that's what people need to realise.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a drop of 22.9% of properties priced up to 200,000 on the market in the UK in the last 12 months. Yet an increase of 13.3% of properties priced between 500,000 to $1 million in the UK in the same period. Focusing on a lower price range nationally, there are 39.4% fewer properties for sale in the price range of up to 100,000, 27% fewer in the 100,000 to 150,000 range, 14.9% fewer in the 150 to 200,000 range, and the range that has seen the highest growth is the 600 to 750,000 mark, which has grown by 14.2%. That's actually quite a big number, isn't it?
It's quite staggering, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very surprising, eh?
Yeah, quickly show you that in graph form, hopefully. Let's see it in graph form. Just always like a graph. Always include a graph, just to show you where you're going. So that's it in graph form. When you look at it in terms of the price, we'll just click on there. See, I'm clicking on the wrong ones. I've lost it completely. I'm trying to get rid of that wee thing. Disappears sometimes. No, done it. Ruined it. Gassed it. You've blown it.
You got there.
There it is. It's away now. You can see the bottom bit. Aye, there you go. Aye, I've got too many files in that folder. So the number of properties for sale in the UK by asking price, you can see that at the bottom. The bottom end, actually, these number of properties have actually dropped. So that's why I believe the bottom end of the market will still see the best gains, because there's kind of scope there for that to grow, whereas the upper market, it's kind of grown already, if that makes sense. And there's an oversupply as well. So there's an undersupply in the bottom end, so it still makes it more attractive. So things like the flats and apartments are definitely the ones that I think will still continue to see a reasonable price growth and actually a good result. Is that kind of where you guys are thinking?
Well, what I see, from the higher end budget and from the market a year ago, people are in a financial position to offer 10, 20, 30% over the home report, whereas the lower end of the market or the less value end of the market, and when it's first time buyers or people, investors or landlords, they're willing to offer over, but not got the budget to go so much. So they're going to go steadily up, and it will just take a bit of time for in Scotland for the home reports to catch up where they'll go, but they'll progressively increase by a few thousand every year, I would say.
I think there's an element of it as well. I think we've seen that impact on the news, haven't we, with all the big strap lines that we continue to see with regards to mortgages being withdrawn and mortgages being frozen. So that kind of starting point at the market as well, those buyers potentially have maybe taken a step back, haven't they? Because there's been so much unknown recently about that, hasn't there? But there's some good news to share on that though, Jim, now, isn't there, in regards to some, like the Halifaxes, etc., are actually putting more mortgages in there and reducing their rates. So you might actually then see that impact from that first-time buyers in a positive sense.
Yeah. It's quite interesting because we talked about that in the mortgage market yesterday with Neil Bird. So if you've not seen that mortgage update, just move back a couple of posts on here and you'll see that with Neil, and also the podcast is on there as well. But instantly enough, the swap rates are obviously more stabilised, and the investors are actually happy to lend more to the banks. in terms of their capital in order to refinance out to fixed rate mortgages. So fixed rate mortgages have moved down slightly, and it's more of a stabilisation of the government, I suppose. I think that's what that comes down to. It's more of the stabilisation of the government. I mean, looking at closer to home though, there are 58% more properties for sale in Fife compared to today, compared to a year ago. And as I said, that's about just over 900 properties, and yet a year ago there was about 510. That's a big difference. But it gets much more interesting when you split the increases into the bedrooms and the property types. I mean, properties with more bedrooms tend to be more expensive than those with fewer. Also, detached and semi-detached properties are more expensive than terraced houses or apartments. You know, Perry, do you have a breakdown of percentages and increase and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you're right with what you say there, Jim. I mean, if we start off at the larger end, which is what we're saying is the big peak point in the market just now, 5-bed properties in Fife have increased by 43%. That's quite.
Wow.
That's nearly half of the properties that are out there are 43%. That's huge. I knew that we'd seen it ourselves with the properties that we bring to market, but I didn't think it was as high as 43% throughout Fife.
Yeah.
And then 4 beds, they're sitting at an increase of 87%.
That's no surprising.
So again, that's your stable part for families, isn't it? Your 3 beds, 127. The 3-bed semi, I mean, how many of those have we been selling recently?
Yeah.
It's a big demand, isn't it?
But I've always said this is a realignment of the prices in Fife. Fife's been historically low for a lot of years, and it's hardly seen any growth at all. So it was no surprise when I think it was 2019 or thereabouts, I was starting saying to people, you know, Fife looks extremely attractive in terms of the multiplier when you look at the average salary to the average price at that time. And that's why you saw a huge jump of about 24% in the last couple of years, 30% in the last 3 years. But equally before that, when you look at the last 5 years, it's only about 35%. So year 4 and year 5 was only really about 2.5%, maybe 3% growth every year. And then all of a sudden, boom, it started to happen. But it started to happen just before lockdown as well. It was lockdown, it exacerbated it, obviously, because there was a bigger market and people went, wait a minute, I need another room. And then it forced them into a position where I need a better outside space. So a lot more people actually moved. I think transactions might actually slow down next year, the number of transactions. The health of the market, the property market, is not about the price of the property, it's about how many transactions are taking place. And if transactions hold up, then okay, you're on a winner, basically. If transactions don't hold up, then that does cause the real issue. And that's what we'll have to be mindful of, is the number of transactions in the marketplace at the time. So what about 1 and 2 bed properties then?
Well, 2 beds, you've seen an increase of 17%, and 1 beds, you've seen an increase in 22%. So the 1 beds, the starters, that's a big jump.
I do think that's what I mean. When you think about the 1 bed and the 2 beds, it's only an increase of 17 and 22 in terms of the price than a few years ago. So when you look at that, there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more mileage in them. I think there's a lot more mileage in the 1 beds and 2 beds because we're still a nation of people who like to live on our own. Let's be honest. Or we've learned to live on our own. Or we've learned to have a place that we can go away on our own. I don't know if anybody else feels like that. I'll have to go all the way to Spain. But that's the sort of instead of the shed down the bottom of the garden, which it used to be, a lot cheaper option when you think about it. However, it doesn't have the sunshine all year round. But what about property type then, Jimmy? You know, how does it Fife detached and semi-detached? I mean, what is the increase over the detached and semi-detached types?
Well, the 5 detached properties have had an increase of 101% more on the market. That's the biggest jump. The 5 semi-detached properties, an increase of 76%. The 5 terraced or townhouses, an increase of 89%. And 5 apartments is an increase of 14%.
Again, the poor relation, but Fife apartments will start to go up when interest rates start to go up as well, because you all know yourself, first-time buyers will go for the apartments because that's all they can afford.
Yeah.
So when interest rates go up, now generally that's what usually happens typically, but we saw a totally different pattern of behaviour when lockdown came in, and Fife apartments were still going up. I mean, you know yourself, Jermaine Perry, you know yourself, typically there was an apartment was, a 2-bedroom flat was maybe 55 grand, and then 2 years later it's now 75, 80, all of a sudden. So that was, but it was always that price back in, even in the credit crunch. So it's just a case of all catching up and waiting to catch up as well is the key here. So, and some of the properties actually sold, even some that I bought myself actually, are actually more expensive in 2008 than the way that I've bought them right now.
Yeah, and I think that's what people need to realise, especially, well, that definitely for the leaving Mel's market.
And then when you think about it, look at this. Salaries have gone up since 2008 by almost 2/3. So yeah, that flat was a higher interest rate in 2008. It was a higher price in 2008, and it was a lower salary in 2008. And now that flat is cheaper, a lower interest rate, and a higher salary. Other way around.
Yeah, the economics of scale.
Yeah, that's why I believe that flats and apartments have really got a good growth to go in terms of price point. But that's quite interesting. The increase in these larger Fife homes is great news for second or third time movers, as it relates to larger homes for them to bring up their young families. Yet the other side is the lack of properties for these mature Fife homeowners to buy. That's the problem here, isn't it?
I found it a huge problem.
Trying to get them, I was going to say try to get them out of their property, but it's no, we're not trying to get anybody out of their property. They're trying to get out of the property themselves in order to downsize. The problem is they've got nothing to downsize to, because potentially, and this is just my view, potentially there's not enough of the right house type getting built to accommodate that age group.
I would agree with that, Jim. I mean, I class myself in that age group. I class myself as a maturer person looking to downsize. My family's up and grown. It's how I ended up working with you, because you sold my house for me when I did downsize. Yeah. But when I downsized, we ended up going into a rental with Fife properties, actually, called coincidence completely, but because we just could not find a home that we wanted to go to. And it took us a year in a rental before we found a property that we wanted to buy. And even then we had to make compromise. And I think that's what we come across, Jimmy, you'll experience it the same as I do when you're out and about and you're visiting clients. The clients that are in the big properties, they know they want to downsize. They know the economics of the scale of the house that they live in just doesn't work for them anymore. Not just on a maybe kind of looking at after it level. They might have too much of a garden. They might need one level living and it doesn't work for them. So they're looking to kind of downsize and make things easier for themselves. Might be releasing funds to help their other family members. But the key thing that they constantly say to us is, but my only fear is I cannot find anything that I need to go to. There isn't anything out there that suits what I want and what I need that's going to give me the lifestyle choice that I'm looking for now. So what do I do? And it's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what seems to happen all the time. I mean, look at the UK and whole. There's about 12.7 million people aged 65 and over in the UK. 19% of the total population. Yet there are only 2 million bungalows, which represent 7.2% of the UK property market. 12.7 million people over the age of 65, yet there's only 2 million bungalows available. Even if they had, 2 each, that's 6 million to 2 million bungalows. Now, we all know that generally the story you get every single time with people needing to downsize is because they can't manage the stairs.
Yep.
Yet we're still managing to build so many properties with stairs in them every single time.
Yeah.
And even to the point where even downstairs isn't all one level living, because generally, now and again you do get I wouldn't mind a couple of bedrooms upstairs to you know, for the grandkids to visit or something like that. Newsflash: the grandkids won't visit, by the way. And do you know how I know that? Because it's every time my mum used to say that every single time, and it's like it doesn't happen. And I'm thinking, you're getting this big, massive house for that reason, and you know, all that money ploughed into it, all that maintenance you're paying every single year for something for 2 years rattling around a big, huge house. That's how I see it. But that's another story, isn't it? 12.7 million people chasing 2.2 million bungalows. So when it comes to new properties, the figures are even worse. Of the 173,660 properties built in 2019, only 2,384 were actually bungalows. Again, disproportionate. Eh? 2,300 versus 173,000 built. That's nothing in comparison.
That's massively swayed out, isn't it?
Does this mean that planning has to put some? I mean, they're putting legislation in for everything apart from this. I mean, you know, they'll legislate holiday homes, they'll legislate second homes, they'll legislate private rented properties, but they'll not legislate builders and enforcing them. And they will legislate for social housing on building sites now, and that's fine. But they've still not legislated for saying things like, no, I'm sorry, you're not getting planning permission to build all these houses unless you build a certain amount of bungalows. Yeah. Now, how do I know that's happening? Thanks very much for asking me, Perry. That's a good question, because I beat that drum every single time with the people in politics and you know, in the government and stuff like that. And every single time they tell me, oh, well, it's something we can't control. Okay, well, that's not really factually true, is it? You could control anything you want to. All you need to do is create the legislation to do it. It's the choice that they don't want to control it because they're afraid. That's what that comes down to.
And they're so limited. They're so limited, like you say, with the bungalows when they're built. I mean, look what happened with the ones in St. Monans that were built, Jim. How quickly did they go?
Like that. They were gone in a heartbeat, straight away. So this then brings me to the solution then. Is this where the annex could be one solution to this? The granny annex, the add-on to the property, the larger living family, the outdoor space or the outdoor building, it could actually be converted into a one-bedroom self-contained flat or apartment. Annex buildings are often erected and gardens are extended onto the existing property to be used as separate or living accommodation. Generally, the granny annex has always been used as you know, to keep one's parents and grandparents nearby, whilst retaining their independence. But roll back to the clock, to the millennium, annex was seen as an excess accommodation that added little to the saleability or the value of property. Instantly, in the last few years, the annex has a renaissance and has become a practical, economical, and emotional answer to more flexible group homeowners. And by that, I mean, it's people that are prepared to have their parents staying with them. I mean, you always had the joke about, I want my mother-in-law staying with me. Well, you know, that was really driven out of television, wasn't it?
Yeah, and maybe that was comedy sketches.
Maybe that actually imprinted in our culture, where everybody thought of that same sort of remark. But in actual fact, is it really that much an issue?
I don't think so. I actually have a couple of clients at the moment who are looking for exactly that solution. And again, when I've talked to them about how what journey they're on and how they've achieved the decision that they're now making, the common thing that's coming up, and I think it is because we've seen over the last 2 years, is the whole COVID impact to families. And everyone was separated for such a long time and people couldn't visit. You realise actually how much your family meant to you, and all the in-law jokes suddenly were a serious thing to think about in regards to actually that's not what my family's like, and actually maybe we need to think about it. And I've got a few people at the moment who are looking for that higher end number of bedroom properties that we're talking about, because they want to do exactly that. They want to have a one level living space for someone else so that the dad can go and live and have his independence, whilst they can have their bigger family group as well, and the grandchildren can come and stay. So it's like a multi-functioning, multi-level family home.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah, absolutely. Jimmy, what's your experience of this?
I know you've got a client right now that's selling a property to do exactly this, build an annex so she can help look after her mum. And I've recently been out to somebody in Cooper that was considering selling and moving and buying a property to buying a different property which would accommodate her mum coming to live with her. In my opinion, on what they were looking to do, didn't really help the sellability in the future of their property. So I advised against it, because the annex that they were looking to build was going to cost double for the property at Drysdale Gardens in Cooper. So I said you could buy the one in Drysdale Gardens and walk to the Drysdale Gardens in literally 5 minutes. That's how close it was to it. But there's definitely people looking to build annexes.
Drysdale Gardens is all managed. It's all managed. You just pay a factor fee every single year, a management fee, and everything's all managed for you. And it's a really good community area to be in. Similar sort of, originally the original McCarthy Stone sort of prospect, isn't it? That's kind of what that is. I mean, lockdown brought working from home to the fore, and the annex is undoubtedly an excellent solution for many homeowners. I mean, lockdown saw many people recognize the importance of having the family close by. And I've seen several mature Fife homeowners build that annex and extension in the garden, then move into the annex themselves and give them the original property for their children to live in. We'd actually thought about it as well. We've got enough land at the side to actually build a 3-bedroom bungalow. I mean, we bought our 2-bedroom semi-detached anyway. But it was a thought at that point in time. Even my mother and my father down at the Links, I had said to them they could easily have taken the double garage away and actually built an annex out the back for themselves and let one of the other family members actually stay in the main home, possibly with my brother and his family. So we'd always championed this idea and thought that was really the right thing to do. You can see it a lot in the continent as well, where the European families, a lot of them actually have their parents staying with them.
Yeah, definitely more common. And it's funny you say that, because the couple that I was speaking about, massive extension, but they did have a double garage there as well. And I told them, why are you doing this massive extension on your house when you got the brick built double garage right there already, which you could convert, which will probably cost you half the price of what you're planning to do? So speaking to people like ourselves and people that know local areas about things like Drysdale Gardens is a big factor, knowing the knowledge of the market.
That's you've hit the nail on the head, Jimmy. That's probably why it's most important to actually get an estate agent out to actually discuss that with them. I think everybody just thinks we sell houses. We don't really. We provide solutions to everybody's problems. That's really what that comes down to. We take away the pain points and we provide the solutions. And I think that's what most people don't realise. They just think we're actually there to do that one trick pony thing. So Fife owners build an extension in the garden, then move into themselves, originally live in their children, let them move in as well, thus helping two families with their accommodation needs and the advantage of shared fuel costs plus other benefits as childcare. There you go.
built-in nanny.
Come and live with us. It's like, it's like that sort of
I'd
thing.
rather pay the fees.
I know. To be honest, when you think about it as well, it's something we've always floated by ourselves, in the fact that the main house could actually be subdivided where we are as an upstairs and downstairs, and the boys could stay upstairs, and Tony and Rose could actually stay downstairs. And if they have a family, fair enough. They've both got their own self-contained places, and we still keep the property, and we've still got all that privacy. But it's actually a sharing of costs. And it gives everybody a good start, and it's familiarity as well. So, because one of the biggest things you could ever, there's about 5 or 6 big things that you could do that really are quite stressful in your life. And one of them is actually moving house. The other one's getting married, having a baby, starting a job, or leaving a job. That's all the different things that are the most stressful things to do. So why would you not get experts in for all of them just to help you along that process? What about mortgage rates as well then, Perry?
Well, I think as we're seeing, everyone knows that it's happening and mortgage rates are rising. The annex actually could be the salvation to that, couldn't it?
Are they? I never heard.
Have you not seen the strap lines, Jim?
I never heard that the mortgages were rising. Was it on the news?
Just a wee bit. Just a wee bit. But no, I mean, it's a good solution as well if you think about it in regards to the annex, because, it could be salvation for either your first-time buyer, your grandchildren, your son, daughter, mum, dad, who cannot afford to perhaps buy their first home. There could be situations where that happens because of mortgage affordability, perhaps. And they're maybe just finding it tough as well to save a deposit for their mortgage. So an annex is a great way of doing it. Actually, the history of one of the properties we're selling just now has exactly that. They have a granny annex, or it was created as a granny annex. It's now all one house, but the previous owners did that then. So, it does happen. It's not as frequently, but I mean, it is an option. Yeah.
Is that Buckhaven? Yeah. Funny enough,
the Buckhaven property, yeah.
A few doors down from that one, that was the same principle. They looked after their father as well. So, exactly the same thing. The demand is definitely there for annexes. I mean, in December 2020, Rightmove reported a year-on-year 89% increase in the number of home buyers and tenants searching for the term annex. 89% increase. Demand is high and supply, as seen by the statistics, is actually quite low. So that's the problem. Of the 900, or at the time when we did this, we put the script together, there was 804 properties on the market in the Fife area, and only 11 of them actually had the annex to them. So 11 had annex. What about lockdown then, Jimmy? What do you believe about lockdown?
Well, I believe that lockdown made many of us look at how we live in the UK.
Yeah.
Many people are adapting, and changing on how they look at housing. With the replacement, with the recent planning regulations changes and the rules being relaxed a few years ago, that's allowed homeowners to extend their homes without planning permission in an arrangement called permitted development. So they can extend a certain amount without getting planning, which is a lot of hassle, especially with everybody. Well, a lot of the Fife Council that's still working from home. It takes a lot longer to get. I've got a client right now who's on the market, but potentially looking to build a house on the side or very close by, or get planning for a house on the same plot. And his application's been in for 4 weeks and it's not even been acknowledged yet. So that's how long you have to.
Right. Listen, there's people's applications been in for 4 months and they're still not been acknowledged yet.
Yeah, so
I'll be honest, and I didn't want to castigate planning or anything, but to be honest, it's a law unto itself in Fife Council. The amount of people I've actually spoken to, they keep saying their resources are scarce, but I tell you what, that drum's been beaten well before lockdown. They've always been under-resourced and they can't have enough time to go and help you with anything. And you're more or less having to get someone to do the job that they were meant to do in the first place.
Yeah.
And actually all they're doing is possibly just ticking a box after doing an audit. Now, whether that's an under-resource, an under-scarcity of resources in Fife Council because of cutbacks, that could be another story, but I don't know that. I just know that most people will go out to have actually submitting planning applications. It's been what they term as a nightmare in terms of trying to push them through and get them through. So if somebody out there in Fife Council is watching in the planning department, maybe you could shake it up a bit. Maybe you should actually comment on here. Maybe you can actually comment on here and tell me what's going on. Tell us what's going on out there. Let's wrap this up. Okay, Perry, final words on this.
I think for me, we're just seeing a whole different way of living, aren't we? And I think that it's the granny flat, as we would call it, or annex as it is being named here, is definitely something that's come into play. And even where there isn't accessibility to do that, we're seeing families that are going into properties now, and as long as the room is big enough, they're saying, okay, doesn't matter if it's got 3 bedrooms and 2 receptions, I could make it 4 bedrooms. People are just looking at different ways of making lifestyles work for them, aren't they? So I think for me, it's just about our whole way of thinking and living, I think, is changing. And the older we're becoming, I think the more that we appreciate maybe our families. And this is a good way for maybe some families to make it work for them.
Absolutely. Jimmy, what about yourself?
I would say if you are a Fife homeowner and you want to look at all your options regarding upsizing, downsizing, annexes, then just drop us a message. Be happy to chat through your options. I'm not going to tell you that you have to sell. As I said, I've told people to don't do anything, just buy something else closer to home. So speak to us and we can give you all the facts and figures and let you decide on which is best for you, and we can help you on that course if that is, or whatever that may be.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. It's like, get the facts. The most important thing when I'm rounding up and just here, to anybody watching or listening in, get the facts first. Get your estate agent out, no matter who that is. Get the right information. Make your decision based on the facts rather than just someone else's opinion. That's the most important thing, because the market is changing every single day, almost every single day, the way that it's working right now. And that's the most important thing. For everybody else in Fife, what do you think about annexes? And what other solutions could help solve the housing issue and the housing crisis in the Fife and the UK as a whole? And until next time, guys, and tomorrow morning, I'll see you on the Fife Property Show at 9:30. We're going to be doing a lettings market one. It's bye-bye from us. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys. Take care.